everyone, and welcome to another edition of my Become Unstoppable interview series. Now, you may or may not be aware that normally I kind of had guests on that I have been entrepreneurs, mainly because that's the area that I kind of hang out in right now. But one of my passions after spending 35 years in the corporate world myself is to get help in. I want to go and help the corporate world people as well. So as a starter for 10 for that, I've got a very good friend of mine who's sitting on the other side of the screen, Mr. Andrew Grimme, who will introduce himself shortly, who I used to work with many years ago, and more recently, actually. But he's a very interesting guy, a great friend of mine, and I'd love for you to enjoy this interview with us. For those who don't know me, I'm Julie. I'm from Millerside Therapy and Coaching, and my passion really is helping people to understand the impacts of stress, overwhelming, and anxiety, right? And help you understand the impact to your mind, body, and soul, really, with it. And that actually, if we continue in this stress state, we are going to end up with physical and psychological conditions. And we don't want that, do we? Because we want to be calm, we want to be confident, and we want to be happy and healthy, right? So that's a little bit about me. You can find me on all the channels and I'll share all those with you later. But before we go any further, I'd like my guest, Andrew, to introduce yourself, please, my darling.
Hi everyone, thank you, Julie. Yes, it was. I think it was about 27 years ago we first worked together. I know we don't look old enough, but I actually sat next to Julie on my very first day, my kind of first proper job, and she kind of didn't tease me too much, and she showed me the ropes. So and we've obviously known each other and been friends ever since. So obviously, you know, who am I? I've worked in the corporate world in the asset management business for 27 years. I've sort of worked my way through different roles in that time. I've contracted, as in like freelance work, as well as worked on a permanent basis. I came out as gay when I was about 23 personally, but 25 professionally. We'll dwell on that a little bit more later on in the interview. I've been with my husband, Matthew, for 16 years, married for 11. We adopted 2 children 11 years ago, and got a dog and a cat who are actually in the background somewhere, so hopefully they'll be quiet. But yeah, so that's kind of me. And another thing we'll probably touch on later on is sort of my sort of slow struggle to sort of come out and be my sort of authentic self. It's only been the last 3 or 4 years where I've been able to really kind of shine doing that. And also joined our LGBTQ network at work, and I'm now leading our global events, so overseeing and facilitating all of those. So, and we'll touch more on that later. Thank you.
Amazing. That's crazy, isn't it? 27 years. Yeah, mad.
More than half my life.
Yeah. And I'm obviously a lot older than you, but never mind. But yeah, so thanks for that. And I know one of the things we want to talk about during this interview is, you know, the stress and overwhelm and anxiety that most people experience at work. We say the corporate work, but that could be corporate world, but that could be, that's just any employment really, isn't it? Or any walk of life really. But we're going to touch on that. But before we do that, and Andrew, can you answer my very special question that I ask all my guests, which is, what does being unstoppable mean to you?
I mean, it might sound a bit crazy, but it's almost carrying on until you're told to stop, which by definition is unstoppable. But I think for me, I think it's kind of the drive to always kind of do the right thing, and certainly in you know our business, you know, it's kind of always having that integrity to do the right thing by your customer. And if you win the customer over, then you'll keep your customer, and that what keeps you profitable in business. And I think that kind of manifests itself in a number of ways. So for me, it's kind of helping out as much as I can, as much as possible. Unfortunately, sometimes probably to my own detriment, if I'm being honest. As I say, always trying to do the right thing, but most importantly, sort of carrying on doing what you believe is right until you're kind of told to stop. And when you're told to stop, you ignore that and just carry on anyway, to a degree. But I think there'd always be challenges and barriers, and they they will come in many different forms, whether that's more senior management or just the scenario or situation you find yourself in personally. But I think just being able to kind of just keep an eye on the vision and the goal, and to really kind of just keep striving for that, I think is what kind of keeps you going, and what keeps you being
I like
unstoppable.
that. Yeah. And it's funny actually when you know, I left the corporate world completely, probably 2.5 years ago now. I lose track. Time just, I can't believe COVID was like 5 years ago. Just, I can't comprehend really. But the journey that I've been on, I didn't even realise that I live my life stressed, burnt out sometimes, definitely lacked confidence. Although I came across as quite a confident person, inside I wasn't. And it's only retrospectively as I've gone through the journey since I started my new life, I suppose, which started in 2020 when I got made redundant, was to really uncover what was going on inside of me, and that's how I work with my clients. But we'll cover that off a little bit. But one thing I just want to say before I forget is that many of us have presenting issues of stress, anxiety, lack of confidence, and we try and ignore them and we try and push through them. And sometimes we can feel like we're succeeding, but actually you'll still find yourself being held back and pulled back. And until we work on what's going on inside ourselves, then we will struggle to become unstoppable, I think. But anyway, that's enough of that. We'll come back to that in a minute. So let's do a little unravel of your life, right? So now you just described where you are now, like with you know, your husband and your children, which was amazing. But let's go back a little bit, shall we, to when the time when we first met, because when we was having a chat about this the other day, I mean, my memory is shocking on stuff like that anyway, but we were talking about when you first started, that when we met, that was your first job, wasn't it?
First proper job, yeah, absolutely. So, and I mean, way back then it was, I mean, probably had a few recessions since then, but we were still kind of coming out the back end of that last recession. And you know, and jobs were quite scarce, and especially if you didn't actually have any kind of relevant experience. So, you know, coming out of university, it did take a good few months, sort of 6-7 months, I think it was, before and then kind of got a job. And actually, oddly enough, it was coming to work for you, and it was just a 2-week temporary job to start with, and it was to cover someone that was going to go on holiday for 4 days.
Oh, really?
So to kind of learn, yeah, to literally to learn the ropes the first week, and then cover them for 4 days, and then hand back over on the last day, and then it was off you go, Andrew, see you later. And I thought, well, you know, it's experience. I'll give it a go. I have no idea what these unit trusts are and all this sort of stuff. And so you kind of, you know, and at the end of the first day, I remember, you know, Steve, you know, our boss at the time, just sort of said, I mean, you've done quite well, say, Andrew. You know, we've got this thing called tax year end coming up, and we get quite busy, and we probably could do with another pair of hands. You know, after these 2 weeks, have you got anything planned? I went, no. And I was there for 9 years, so in various roles. So that's how it kind of all started. And I think I was still a temp for about 6 months in total, and then kind of got taken on as permanent. But yeah, it was kind of obviously completely fell into it. I suppose growing up, I never really quite knew exactly what I wanted to do. I never had that obvious specific passion or kind of topic. I kind of always assumed, you know, because I used to count my money in my money box and stack it up, I'd probably be a bank manager or something, but I had no real idea. And I think also when you come from a background where your parents aren't in that kind of world as such, you know, my dad sort of worked for in sales for a foundry, my mum worked in schools. Yeah, I had no idea. I mean, my main job that I've done in my career is a business analyst. Well, I didn't even know it existed. You know, when I was in high school, you know, when they did all the careers fairs and they brought around all the leaflets, these are kind of jobs you could do. I don't remember seeing business analyst on there anyway, you know. And so it's a bit crazy, but you know, I do feel my career has kind of just evolved. I think I've been really quite lucky at times, I have to be honest. I think I've been lucky with the people I've worked with. I think I've gained a lot from them as I progressed. But as I say, started
I
doing
mean, that'd be me, you
sort
mean?
of
That's who
fairly.
you're talking about.
Yeah, mainly you, Julie, and others, but I think I sort of stayed in kind of the operations kind of side for about sort of 3 or 4 years. I did some user acceptance testing that kind of got me a bit more involved with things like that, and then I moved into our IT. I mean, if anyone knows me and just knows how good I am with technology, I mean that baffles most people. That's that, and that took me up to about my sort of 5th year, and then I got a job as a BA, working for Brian, and Alec was my mentor at that point, and just sort of from there, kind of sort of steamed away. I think I found the thing that I was good at, essentially, or I thought I was quite good at anyway. But I think, as I say, I was about 25 before I came out, and I think those first few years where I was just expending so much energy trying to hide my true self, I don't think I excelled at work because I was exhausted from it, and really at that time of life when actually you don't have a mortgage and you don't have kids and you don't have the worry of bills and everything like that. It should have been a time when I was really able to shine and progress and really accelerate my career, and I think I was really kind of held back by that. Certainly looking back now, I'm sort of quite convinced of that. But as I say, it was a fairly slow coming out, and I still didn't really feel like I could be my true self. But yeah, and I sort of got to about 9 years with where I was with you, and I decided to do contract work for some time, and spend a number of years in sort of lots of different businesses doing slightly different projects and roles. And got a really great broad experience from loads of companies. And you see things, well, that worked well, that didn't work quite so well, and you sort of take that on board, and you can learn a lot from that. And I think, again, very lucky with the kind of businesses and people that I worked with and could learn a lot from them. But I think I also felt like I was getting to the point where when I was in a lot of these contract roles, you don't really have much authority to do a great deal, because you're not kind of an actual decision maker. You can put options papers forward, but that's kind of where it ends. And sometimes, although there was often management, sometimes there was a little bit of void of leadership, and I kind of felt myself just naturally gravitating towards leading. And it's interesting. It's something that actually dogs do in a pack. That when they don't have a strong leader, a dog assumes that position of leader, but none of them really want to because it is a stressful kind of role to take on. And I think we kind of do the same thing, or some of us do that. When you kind of notice that void, you kind of naturally move into it. But if you don't really have the authority or the skills, or the training, or the support, it is a very stressful place to be. And so what I really wanted to do was kind of go back into a permanent role and kind of do it properly. So that's kind of where I've been sort of more recently in my career, and I've sort of worked in more of like a propositions role. I'm now in a policy and sort of product governance role. Whether that's quite where I want to be long term, perhaps not. But I think for me at the moment, I'm sort of at that sort of middle management stage, very much kind of looking to move up to the next level.
Can I just?
So does that kind of give you enough?
Yeah, because I'll interrogate you more in a minute. That's fine. But what I want to point out, though, to you is, in some respects, you just reminded me of myself, really, how I used to, or probably still do to a point. Like you said, I've gone into these roles and I was very lucky, and so what I want to say to you is, yes, it's great when you have good mentors and you've got people that you can learn from, but let's not take away what you did. You put yourself in those positions. You didn't just get lucky and someone said, oh, let's give Andrew that promotion. No, you would have done a lot of work. You would have worked well with people. You would have learned and grown. So don't, take that away from yourself. And that, as I said, is very much the sort of thing I would do. And that's because probably there's something going on in here that you don't quite believe in yourself, right? And then that's when when we don't. I was saying to you earlier, wasn't I, that what my biggest thing, and I didn't know this until after, the events, like when I'd left the corporate world and I'd started doing all my training. Well, I did go back for a little while, obviously, but you know, I uncovered my limiting beliefs, that I didn't feel I was worthy and I didn't feel good enough. Right. So you can feel confident but still not feel worthy, and they are very different things. You can also feel not confident and not worthy, but you can be confident but still have that I'm not worthy inside. And that was very, very much me. And I see it a lot in most people. And it does hold you back. You know, it held me back in the corporate world, and it's held me back in my business as well, because I had the belief that I was only average. I spent my whole life believing I was average. And if I put myself above the pedestal or above the line, then I'll be seen. Because if you're really, really super amazing, then you'll get seen. And if you're really, really crap and naughty, or, you know, when you go back to school or something like that, you get noticed, right? But if you sit in the middle, no one really sees you. And interestingly, you know, like sometimes you think to yourself, I wonder if I just remember that badly and it wasn't really that bad. And I remember once my son was around my parents' house and they were sorting out a cupboard or something, and they found some of my school reports, right? Now, I was as good as gold at school, never had a detention, you know, but I got average marks. I was good at some things, rubbish at some others. And he brought some of my school reports home. Now, back in the day, they were handwritten. And as I flicked through them, there was teachers that I thought to myself, you don't even know who I am, because it was so linear. It was so vague. It was so, oh, yes, Julie's very good. And I thought, you don't even know who I am, and I've been in your class all that time, you know. So it kind of reinforced the fact that my beliefs around it, or my memory, I should say, were correct. But it made me feel really sad, because it's like, I mean, I think I had a pretty successful career in the corporate world, but I think I could have done a lot more. I think I could have had so much more success, but I always, my subconscious, my subconscious believes that, Julie, you're not worthy. It pulls you back. And I think this is so important, because this happens to anyone in any walk of life. Doesn't matter what job you've got, you know, it can impact you, and it will impact your career progression, because you won't have the confidence to put yourself forward for that promotion or apply for a new job, whether it's in the company or in another company. So it impacts you financially, right? Because you can't, if you stay in a job for a long, long time, we all know that, you just get your little increments, but to make money, you need to move on or go for the promotions, don't you? And if you're lacking in confidence or worthiness or whatever it is inside, it's going to impact you financially, in your happiness, and potentially in your health as well, because you're not happy and you feel frustrated. Does that resonate, or do you know people that resonate?
It absolutely does. And oddly enough, and again, I mentioned this earlier on, I just sent through a mentor request to someone this morning, and in kind of the blurb that I kind of sent on to them, one of the things I actually wrote was, I feel like I've got lots of skills. I don't quite have the experience to bring it together, but I'm really worried or concerned that the skills that I do have are kind of go to waste if I don't start acting on it. So that, and again, I know we sort of say it's partly mentor will kind of help with some of the confidence, the skills, the opportunities, and you're right, you say it's about working on yourself as well. And I think that's certainly something in my sort of personal development plan I've got for this coming year at work. There is a lot more on that. I need to have more confidence in the word no.
Yes, boundaries.
Because I'm really good at saying yes to everything all the time, and then I kind of look back and go, oh, wish I hadn't kind of said yes, really, because I don't really.
Then you call yourself stress and overwhelm, right? Because you've got too much to do.
And exactly, and I think because if you're someone that genuinely cares about the outcome, you want to do your best, but to do your best involves time, effort, and if you haven't got that, then you're squeezing things left, right, and centre. So I was very proud of myself yesterday when there was phase 3 of a particular project was about to kick off, and I said, I think this is probably the time I should bow out of this project. And I was really proud of myself, because I thought, I did it in a really constructive way. there's been some reorganization in the company, and it just meant that a couple of teams have kind of come together. And I thought, well, you don't need me, and this other guy, because in theory, this other guy should be able to handle all of that because it's now part of the same team. You don't need me as well. So actually, that was quite a big moment for me. I kind of almost smiled after I sent the send button. Like, oh, I've done it! Look at me. And I think there are those little things. We need to do more of, and we talk about sort of time management all the time, and we sort of say, oh, we need to set aside some time. We don't have to answer emails straight away. We can just sort of block out 2 or 3 hours, really focus on something, get something done, get the headspace correct for what you're doing, and then come back to emails. But I think part of the problem, most companies these days, they have an email system, but they also have like an instant messaging type system. And what I've actually been finding more recently, with the new, I think it's Windows 11, is that when you get certain emails, you then get a notification in Teams to tell you you've had an email. Equally, you get emails to tell you you've had a message. So everything seems to be doubled up. And so you find yourself almost continue to delete. And then you go, oh, crikey, I've deleted something I shouldn't have deleted. And then going to the deleted folder to try and find the thing you've just deleted that you shouldn't have done. And you kind of think that's all really just non-value add stuff. And but it takes time. And so if you're trying to do that in a rush, that's when kind of mistakes can happen and risks can kind of happen. So, really compartmentalizing your time is something I advocate strongly, but hardly ever do. As soon as worse than a teenage kid with their phone, something goes ping and they go, oh God, who's that? What do they want? What do they need? And I think it is that drive to kind of please others. And I think partly that's kind of born out of the fact that if I'm working on something, if I ask someone a question, I'd be much happier if they kind of answer me really quite quickly, because then I can just carry on what I'm doing and I can get it done. So I kind of think the same, but it's not always reciprocated. And maybe that's just because their time management actually is a lot better than mine.
I think what you're saying there, right? I 100% agree, right? Because when I work with my clients, and in particular in my group program that I have, it's all about teaching people that you are the most important person, right? And it goes back to self-care. Now, self-care doesn't mean that, oh, well, I have a shower and wash my hair. Not that kind of self-care. Obviously, that's all part of it, but it's more than that. It's about, you have to keep your cup full, otherwise you can't help other people. And most of us have been on an aeroplane with the, don't put, when the mask drops, put yours on first before you help anyone else, right? Now, most of us, it maybe in the aeroplane situation, you might be all right because that's what they're telling you to do, right? And it's instruction, and hopefully no one ever has to do that. But in reality, for people to do that in their everyday life, they struggle with, right? Because it just doesn't feel right, does it? Especially, I mean, I don't want to single out sexuality people, whether it's men or women, but for me, I was a working mum, and I was working full time. So I was like busy doing my work stuff. I'd come home and everything's like to actually go, oh, hang on, I can't do all that because I can't take time for me because I haven't seen my son all day and I haven't done, and it's really, really difficult. You've got a family. It's the same, isn't it? It's about, it doesn't matter what role anyone's got, does it? It's the fact that there's so much to do. And the thought of actually saying, do you know what? I need to have 10 minutes, 15 minutes to go and meditate, and then I'll come and deal with you and cook your dinner. It's like, what? But the reality is, if we don't put ourselves first, then we end up getting sick, we get tired, we end up getting physical or psychological conditions. And at some point, our body will go, right, that's it, Andrew, you've not been listening to me. Now I'm going to make you sick for a week and now you can't get out of bed. Right? And you're like, oh my God, this has come up at the most horrendous time because I'm so busy. But what's happened is, when we don't take time for ourselves and we don't stop and we don't get ourselves in the present moment for a little while, then we can't listen to our body. And when we can do that, our body will be saying, Andrew, can you just slow down a minute because you need to rest? But you're not listening, right? So you go on and carry on, and then it has to hit you. Most people have experienced that, right?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's, I would say at the moment, and my other half has said just recently, I'm probably busier now than I've probably ever been since we've been together. And I think, partly, that's obviously because we do have, our lives build, don't they, over time? You kind of gather children and pets and bigger houses and roofs that need fixing and gardens that need weeding and everything else. And you kind of build your life over time, and it's quite hard, because I think there's that kind of sort of human psyche that we kind of want bigger, better, more all the time. It's quite hard to get
Yeah.
out of that kind of psyche. So we do build our lives over time, but then you're kind of beholden to that as well. But I think, I think at the moment, I think this is, quite probably across the board, but I think certainly within the corporate world, and the kind of businesses that I work for, and with, and partner with, there is serious cost pressures in the industry. There's regulation that's requesting that pensions provide value for money, and we need to be able to demonstrate that. And if there are, the charges are too high, or you're not delivering enough, you've got to do something about it. So, but also, sort of advisor firms, they've got to do the same with their clients, so they can't pay us as much money as they used to. So costs are being driven down and down and down. And we have to avoid that kind of race to the bottom on price, otherwise we won't ever have any money to invest and keep our products at the level they need to be. But I think because of those cost pressures, there are restructures and reorganizations going on, and I think a lot of people do feel that they don't want to be the one that drops the ball, because if you do, you're the one that will be made redundant. And I think at the moment, because the whole industry is suffering a bit, a lot of it's down to global markets and sort of economic pressures and all those kind of things. But I think there's a bit of a shift as well in the way customers interact with us. The younger customers coming in, they're demanding a lot more for the money, etc., which is kind of absolutely the right thing, but it does create pressure. And I think because all businesses are going through it, if you get made redundant, the chance of you finding something else with another company at the moment aren't necessarily particularly high. So I think there is that kind of desire to not be the one that drops the ball. So you work harder, you work longer, possibly not smarter, and then you add that on to everything else, and before you know it, like some people I could mention, like myself, you kind of up at 6 in the morning, and sort of you don't really stop till 9, 10 o'clock at night by the time you've done all the things you need to do.
Yes.
But I do try and include some things that are that do give me that sort of headspace. So I have made a point of going to the gym a lot more, and I think just doing those really kind of basic repetitive physical movements gives my head a break, because a lot of people say my head doesn't stop, there's always something whirring around in my head. So that physical or basic physical movements and things really helps to take that noise away. I really enjoy weeding the garden, and I will do so to a forensic level. But it's something that's quite therapeutic, I find, because you can sort of say, right, I'm in the next hour, I'm going to set out to weed this particular flower bed that's in X by X size. And an hour later, you look back and go, I've done that. And you get that gratification to go, I set out to do something and I have achieved it. And it's quite contained within time. But I think a lot of the projects we work on in work, they're 2, 3, 4 year projects. Sometimes you don't do it from the beginning, and sometimes you don't see it through to the end. So where's the gratification in that? It gets lost somewhere along the way. So I think those kind of small sort of physical tasks where you set out to do something, you set a goal, and very, very quickly you've achieved it, and you go, great, marvelous, and you get that sort of emotional and sort of mental pat on the back, which I think we all need from time to time.
So a few things I'd say about that. Right, I know it's easier said than done, but having being in the corporate world and knowing exactly what you're saying, and now being on the other side of the world, not in the world, but you know what I mean, with the insights that I have now, I totally understand where you're coming from, but what we have to understand is working ourselves from, like, you know, the hours that you're, sorry, I keep doing that, you can't see my arms.
No, I can't.
No, it looks like you're not working many hours. Keeping me
No, I'm
straight.
not doing anything at all.
But the point being, right, we can be too busy being busy. What we have to look at is, what are you actually doing in your day, right? And then there's things like you mentioned earlier about, okay, what things could I delegate, right? So you very well put earlier on that I decided that I wasn't needed in that project, right? So you've taken yourself out of that. But what you need to do is, I got taught this by one of my coaches, actually. I think it was over a 3-week period, but so it feels a bit of an overhead to start with, but write down every 20 minutes, half an hour, what it is you're doing, right? And do that for a couple of weeks. And you can do it in all, whether it's in your business day or your life day, if you like. Then go through and see which items in there that you don't need to do anymore because you're just doing them and no one really needs them. What could I delegate? What shouldn't I be doing? You know, in the role, in your instance, in the role that you're in now, what should you not be doing that maybe one of your team should be doing? But it's really about, sometimes there's things like, we pick this up and you get caught on, I don't know, whether it's your sports app or whatever app it is, or pinging, turn it off. Have an hour where you've turned it all off. I hear you in terms of, because I've got WhatsApp on my desktop and it's been pinging just now, and that was like irritating because I could hear it and I could see it, right? And I'm doing a live interview, but it still distracted me, right?
Yeah.
So we have to take away those distractions as much as we can. So give yourself a phone free at half an hour. Give yourself time to evaluate what you are doing. And as I said, what can you delegate? What can you get rid of? You know, what's really adding value? Now, we can all be busy being busy, right? We can all work 12, 13, 14-hour days. But out of that 12, 14-hour days, how many of those hours are actually productive? Are actually worthwhile? Or if you was to break it down, how long did you sit there going, I ought to write those notes up? You know,
Probably not actually that long with me. I have to
I'm
be
just going to
honest,
get
but yeah,
distracted on here for a minute.
Right.
Do you know what? Probably now I might as well go and make myself a cup of tea, because like now I've distracted myself. And then I might as well go loo, and then I might as well go and do this, and then I might as well write my shopping list. And before you know it, 3 or 4 hours is just gone, and you actually haven't achieved something. Now I am talking about myself here, and I do that in my current work as well now. But please tell me you don't recognise that, right?
I recognise parts of that, yeah, but I think I'm not so distracted by my phone, I have to be honest. But I think what I am distracted with is the constant pinging of messages from work, and I think you're absolutely right. And I know other people that have sort of said, you know, they can sort of disable it or mute it, and I've never done that, mainly because I have no idea how to. But I think I need to find out how to do that, or just, you know, Outlook, as you say, kind of just right focus time. Actually, close Outlook for 2 hours, because you know, I know there's a kind of a matrix we should use for kind of, you know, prioritizing things, whether things are important or urgent. You know, you sort of create a quadrant of those things, and actually it's very, very rare when you get something that is genuinely important and urgent. I mean, most of what we do for work is important, but it's not all terribly urgent. So actually, you know, if I did just go, do you know what, I'm just going to switch everything off for 2 hours, just focus on one presentation or one report, whatever, no one's going to die. But it's, you're absolutely right. It's about us training our minds to kind of get out of what we think we should be doing and actually start doing what we should be doing.
I think a lot of this as well is, we hear a lot about ADHD and all these other isms and stuff out there, right? And I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying that I think we live in a society now where everything is constant. Everything's like this all day long, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Now, I had a conversation with my son about 3 or 4 years ago when he was at uni, and he rang me and he went, "Mum, I need to have a chat with you, but please don't get upset." And I was like, "Oh God, what's he done?" Now, he's not a naughty boy, so I was thinking, oh, my heart was in my mouth. Anyway, he went to me, "Mum, I think I've got ADHD." And if he hadn't have said to me, "Please don't get annoyed," I probably would have got, but I went, "Okay, darling, why do you think that?" And he went, "Well, because I do this, this, this." And I went, "Yeah, so do I. This, 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 this. Yeah, so do I." And he went, "Mum, I think you've got it." And I'm like, "What?" Right, now, I don't care whether I have or I haven't, right? I'm not going to bother wasting any energy on whether I have or I haven't. But I said to him, I don't see myself as having any label because I feel like that's just the way I've lived my life. I've worked in the city since I was 16 years of age, right? And as you know, like you spend your whole day doing this, doing that, running around with, multiple projects, multiple things. You got used to spinning plates. Now, I'm not saying we're necessarily good at it. And if we didn't spin as many plates, we're probably more productive going back to 5 minutes ago. But that's how our brains are wired, right? And I think that's kind of coming across in all walks of life, I think now. And we don't know how to shut our brains off. We know some people, I don't particularly do this habit, but some people will be doing this before they shut their eyes, right? In bed. No, we have to stop all of this. We have to give ourselves time to wind down, give our brain time to wind down. And that doesn't mean like turning off the telly and going straight to sleep. You've got to have that little bit of wind down time. And the later that you're working, the later you're going into that mode, aren't you? Because you're like, "Oh my God, I've only got 5 hours left before I'm going to get up again." And then your mind just never, ever shuts off, and we have to train ourselves to do things differently. And that's something I've hugely learned, and taking time out for yourself is one of those. Even if you just went up to bed and listened to a meditation or an audio or something, rather than looking at the screen of your phone, watching endless rounds of TikTok or whatever it is people do. Now, I'm not knocking social media because obviously I've got social media platforms and I want people to look at my stuff. But other than my stuff, you don't watch mindless hours and hours of rubbish and listening to doom and gloom on the news, because that just brings your levels of happiness down. We want to bring them up. We want to be talking about things that we're grateful for, things that we're happy about, and because we are a vibration. And then we just end up getting sucked into this just whole world of negativity. And then we can't stop the overthinking. But overthinking is stress, really, stress and anxiety. Simple as. So I think society doesn't help because it's just the way everything's just instant gratification. But we have to, if we want to change our lives, we have to make change. The old saying, if you want to change, you need to change, right? And change comes from within. And I never knew any of this stuff. Never knew all this stuff. I thought I could solve everything with this. I used to try and think my way out of every situation. I didn't realize that actually I have to stop and shut this down for a bit and use the 95% of my subconscious mind. And I can ask myself questions and I'll know the answers. And when you can take yourself that step back, be present, be calm, then you can say to yourself, "Do you know what? I've got such a busy day at work tomorrow. I've got this, 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 and this. What do you think is the most important thing I should do first?" And you can take that to your subconscious mind and it'll go, "Do you know what? I think these are the most important things," because you're stopping to listen to yourself. You know the answers. The answer is all within. But when you're too busy being busy, you can't do that. It's mad, isn't it?
So and all wise words, and I think so many of us know that we should be doing it, but we still carry on getting caught up. So it's we definitely need to find that habit, don't we? Of, I mean, even whether it's the beginning of the day, not just straight away going in and going, oh God, I've had 12 emails overnight, I need to do those straight away. But actually kind of go to your to-do list and go, right, what are the three, as you say, what are the three most important things I need to get done today, before you even look at the emails? Because actually most of those emails probably are, you know, just kind of circular type ones, or they're just a reply to something. And none of them are probably going to create, I mean, a few might, but most of them won't create brand new things that need doing. And if they do, they're probably not
People should be
more
putting
urgent than stuff you
urgent
already
in
had
their
in your
title
list.
then, shouldn't they? And this is where you get the email etiquette, isn't it? You know, if something's urgent, tell someone it's urgent. If it needs action, right, action now. Don't just, and then you get caught up in the replies. Then there's about 25 people on that email chain, didn't you? And then you just get, you know, or a WhatsApp message or whatever.
Absolutely. And people get added, you know, because I think there's a fear, there's a bit of a fear of making decisions sometimes, or certainly making decisions alone, or without input from others. And you're absolutely right, you know, email chains can grow and grow and grow. And before you know it, 2 weeks have passed, you've got 40 people on an email chain. You kind of think,
well, I sent it to you. I sent it to you, Andrew. You was on the list, but I didn't read it.
Yeah, because you can't deal with everything. No. And I think as a sort of a corporate world, we need to get away from that. Because I mean, I remember when we first started working, we didn't even have email. Do you remember those times? And I think it was probably about 2 years after I started sort of working, there were certain people that had access to email, only certain people. And you know, you had to be very senior to have an email.
You say that. I remember when these things first came into play. It was like a little mouse, and you're like, what am I supposed to do with this?
But it's true. But you know, but we managed perfectly well without.
We used to ring
email
people, didn't we, back in the day?
We used to call people or go and visit them at their desk, and I know it's slightly different because so many businesses have become so much more global. You know, we yes, we have offices globally, but I think there's been the whole sort of shift to offshoring, you know, sort of operational type roles. So you know, many people do have teams that are split geographically and over some pretty substantial time zones. I know, so where I work on them, we have, you know, a lot of people that work in India and China, and because of that, we have to try and bring a lot of the meetings into our mornings,
that doesn't
so
help,
it's not as late for them. So a lot of people have a lot of their diaries are almost always booked up in the mornings, but relatively free in the afternoon. But equally, you kind of get, oh great, they've got space in the afternoon, and then all you've done is just grab the free time.
That really doesn't help, does it? That really doesn't help.
So, but it is difficult, and I think we all need to probably try and find new ways of working that are more efficient, that add more value, don't inconvenience people that don't need to be inconvenienced. But it's a massive cultural shift that's needed, and I don't think it's not going to be down to any one person or team or even company. I don't think, because we all interact with so many companies, and everybody gets added on, and that's your proof. If they've said that on email, then that's your proof, and you can have that for your audit trail and all the rest of it. You know, everything has to be you know, auditable.
I wonder if that though is because so many people do not believe in themselves and they lack that confidence, and it all goes back to, you know, the self-belief, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking about empowerment just the other day with my boss's boss, and we were sort of saying about that you know the mantra is that, you know, we want everyone to feel empowered to make decisions that are appropriate and they're comfortable making, but yet a lot of people don't feel empowered. And we were talking about it, and he sort of said empowerment is something that is half given and half taken. And I think people aren't always very good at giving it or letting you know what the boundaries or the parameters are within which you can work. But I think equally we're also pretty bad at saying, yeah, I'm happy to make that choice or that decision, or and be able to stand by it. Because I think there's that doubt creeps in. Say, well, I've made that decision, but what if other people don't agree with me?
But that's what I'm saying, though, isn't it? Right? The people that are giving you that
Absolutely.
work, you know, the senior people, most of them haven't done the work on themselves either, right? So a fun fact, right? Between the ages of 0 and 7, we create majority of our belief system. And at that age, our brains don't have any logic, right? So imagine in your adult life now, everybody who hasn't upgraded their software and making decisions in their life, in their career, maybe on a decision they made when they were 5 years old. Who does that? Well, unfortunately, most people, right? You know, you have your phone, you have your laptop, your PCs, but after a while, you have to upgrade them, don't you? Because they don't work anymore. Same with us. If you don't upgrade your internal software, then unfortunately you are going to be sluggish. You are going to be outdated. You are going to be making decisions on things that you probably shouldn't be making decisions on, or you're making the wrong decision. But everything's triggering back to when you were that age. So when you get triggered by someone, you know, you might be in a meeting and then someone says something to you and you like overreact. Well, it's not really anything to do with that person. It's what's going on inside. All right. You're being triggered by maybe a childhood experience. It might be someone spoke to you in a tone of voice that reminded you of someone, maybe of a teacher or your parent or something like that. And all this childhood trauma. And when we talk about trauma, it doesn't necessarily mean that you were raped and pillaged. It just means that you created beliefs that you didn't feel safe, that you didn't feel secure, that you didn't feel loved, you didn't feel worthy, right? It's still trauma in your body, and it creates a physical reaction. And when you're, you know, having a stress moment or an anxiety moment, your body reacts. You know, you might get the heart palpitations, you might get the horrible stomach feeling, and you think, well, where's that all come from? But it's coming back from the past. It's coming back to haunt you in your current. You know, so, and this is why I get so passionate about it, because I didn't know this stuff, and now I do. I want other people to know this stuff, right? And what I love about it is it's not rocket science. When you know the basics and you start learning the emotional intelligence, it isn't that difficult. It's not. You don't have to be a brain surgeon or a doctor. I mean, trust me. Language, Julia. I was going to say something, but you know, I never saw myself as an academic. I never saw myself as smart, you know, and I probably to an extent I still don't, but you know, I hate quizzes because I can't answer any questions, but that's okay, because maybe that's not what I was there for, brought on this world. I wasn't brought on this world to answer intellectual questions. I was brought into this world to help people transform their lives, to save lives, to empower people. That's what I've been put on this earth to do. So it doesn't matter. I just don't bother going to the quizzes. Right. But this is what I was here for. This is what the universe has put me on this planet to do. So here I am doing it, right? In the same way, for you, you've always been an amazing person. And even back then, you were always, for me, I think it was always a standout in the fact that you always wanted to learn, you always wanted to get on. And I don't know whether, we was talking about this the other day, weren't we? Whether, I couldn't remember whether I knew you were gay when you first started, or whether we just assumed you were, but you never said, you know.
Well, I never said in those early stages, because like a lot of people, you kind of remember different times and you remember which office location you were working in. And I remember when I came out, we were in the Islington office, and obviously we were at Counting House to start with. Then we moved to Lombard Street for about 12 months, and then we moved on again. So I remember it was in Islington, which was the third office that we were in. So I remember that distinctly. So I mean, if you did know, you never told me I was gay. So but I think also, I mean, it's one of those things, and as I said, you know, I do a lot of work in the LGBT network, you know, in my current role. You know, we have ally training, you know, and one of the really things we try and do is, you know, if someone comes out to you, how to kind of be with them. You know, the last thing that person wants to hear is, oh, you don't worry, we all knew anyway. It's like, because that person has just spent the last God knows how many years of their life thinking they've done an amazing job of hiding something, and they're now telling you, and you've just undermined their entire beliefs of the last goodness knows how many years. But no, you may well have known. I don't, like everyone. I mean, I can get quite excitable at times. That could be misconstrued as being a bit camp sometimes, but I don't know. I have no idea whether people really knew or not. I think it's always been quite lucky because people have never sort of said. I mean, a few people have sort of said, "Well, I did wonder," but I didn't like to say anything. And I think, well, that's good because in theory, it wasn't really any of your business, and it in theory, it still isn't
exactly,
your business. But I think, but what it kind of comes down to is, when people have, and whether they're gay or whether they've got a neurodiverse condition that they maybe aren't ready to share, or anything else, or a particular belief or religion or anything at all, they're not willing or ready to share. There's just that constant kind of worry that you're going to let something slip. So if you're gay or bi or trans or whatever, when someone says, "Oh, how was your weekend?" you can't go, "Oh, well, I went out clubbing and I met a guy." Oh,
oopsie,
damn, missed it. And that's kind of the thing that you're, and that is that heightened awareness of self that we spoke about earlier is just kind of so utterly draining. And I know obviously at the moment, there's lots of talk about, DE and I in workplaces, and the fact that, obviously, especially in the US, that they're
hang on, whoa, what DM what?
DE and I, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
You can't use those. Not everyone knows what these things are.
Sorry.
You're not at work now,
And sorry. And but it's what people are sort of trying to sort of make out now is that there's so that positive discrimination, but actually most DE and I practices, that's diversity, equity, inclusion practices.
That's right.
I won't do it again now. They're not actually about positive discrimination. Actually, it's about leveling the playing field, because it's not level. There are that playing field is full of danger, divots, craters that people have had to negotiate, whether it's just early career like myself. As I said, first 3 years of my career I felt were really stunted, and even the next 10-15 years after that I wasn't really fully myself. And it's only really when I got to about 45 years old that I felt I could genuinely be me at work. Now,
what changed then? What changed at 45 then that you felt that you
No idea. Maybe it was just a feeling of I'm in a permanent role. Maybe that was enough, that I felt like I had a home, I felt comfortable, I felt secure. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was partly that I joined the LGBT network and felt that level of solidarity and positivity from other people and could have those shared experiences. I think part of it might have been me becoming a visible role model, and actually putting some of myself out there for the whole world to see, being a bit vulnerable, but actually then getting people coming up to you saying really nice, positive things, which kind of makes you feel like your actions have been endorsed. And I think that gives you power. And I think that's kind of probably was, so although I answered that to start with, I had no idea. I think I probably have just answered it, to be honest. But I probably haven't really thought about it. So
you're welcome.
You've managed to drag that out of me. Well done.
That's £100, please.
But I think, it is strange how things happen. But I think, if I think from when I sort of first started working at sort of 22 until age 45, those experiences and how I was, did that impact my career? Absolutely, it did. Is it a level playing field? No. Have DE and I practices helped me level the playing field? Yes. Has it given me an advantage? No. And the thing is, I think the politicization, I think that's a word, of this whole issue has been twisted to make it sound like, oh, well, if this company does DE and I stuff, they're basically, making people that you shouldn't really be getting these jobs get jobs. I mean, we know there was that dreadful plane crash in the States, and Trump sort of instantly sort of says, well, it's because they gave all the air traffic control jobs to disabled people. And it was absolute rubbish, or people that weren't capable. And I think that's the danger in that kind of rhetoric. But actually what we're just trying to do in D&I generally is just kind of go, actually, where it is things are a bit harder for some people for whatever reason, let's just try and create an environment where they can be themselves and level the playing field. That's all it is. It's nothing more than that.
What would you say is the biggest achievement that you've managed to implement in that environment? Just one.
Well, I've got.
Right,
can I do
quickly
two?
though, running out of time.
I've got two. I'll be very quick on the first one. So I was kind of really aware that since COVID, so much stuff is online, and I kind of really wanted to create something for all of our offices globally that meant that when someone walked into our office, they knew it was a safe space for LGBT community. So we created these lovely sort of perspex, very nice branded sort of signs to go on every single reception desk that we've got all around the world. And it's kind of used the gay rainbow kind of sort of motif with our kind of coloured F logo for Fidelity on there. And what that really means is you've got someone that's coming in for a job interview. So they're not even an employee yet. All employees, clients, customers, partners, someone that's come to fix the air conditioning, whatever they are, whoever they are, or for whatever reason they're there, they come in, and I really hope they see that sign. It's quite bright on purpose. It's well positioned on purpose. And hopefully when they get there, they go,
oh, that's lovely.
And they can relax. And hopefully that means they know they're entering a safe space. They know they can be themselves. They don't have to worry. And for whatever purpose they are there for, they can do it to the best of their abilities.
Wow.
So when we talk about leveling the playing field, if you've got someone that's LGBTQ and they're coming in for an interview and they are so stressed because of that, they go, oh my God, what if they find out? What if they find out? Are they going to perform well in that interview? Of course they're not. But if they've seen that sign, hopefully it just gives them a little something to go, actually, do you know what? Even if they did, it wouldn't matter. And they're bound to perform better in interview. And that, to me, is a really small thing. And I have to big shout out to Debbie and Caroline and our corporate property services team that really assisted and helped us get that off the ground, because without them, it wouldn't have happened. So they were just brilliant doing that, and they paid for it as well, which is good. So yes, that's the first one. And then the second one that I'm really, really proud of is the LGBT buddy scheme. So this was kind of an idea that I had sort of, 2.5 years ago now. Create the presentation, the business case, you put it in front of our DE&I council. We got the go ahead to create a pilot that we did in launch last June in UK and Ireland. We've had unbelievable response. I sent out one email to our UK and Ireland allies, and within a couple of days I think it was 19 responses from people to say, I'm going to volunteer. And so because it was only a pilot, we never sent out another email, because I think, gosh, I've got 19 people to train, and we'd written all the training pack. We'd made sure that people were receiving some mental health sort of well-being training, just in case some of the people they were budging with were quite sort of vulnerable at that particular point in time. We had it was all completely anonymous. We designed it in a way that meant people only had to come out to one person, and that was the person they decided to be their buddy. We have a group chat, so if anyone gets any questions where they kind of go, oh God, I've been asked this question by my buddy, I have no idea how to answer this, we've got a bank of people that span the whole LGBT community, and allies and parents of and siblings of and children of, and we can get that perspective and we can help everybody out with any answers. So that kind of went live, and we've had a number of really successful buddy relationships. Obviously, we don't know the details.